Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we're slipping quietly into the strangest corners of the past, where nobles collected humans like ornaments, staged battles without real enemies, danced in flaming costumes, and turned entire kingdoms into playgrounds for their imagination. These are the bizarre, noble pastimes history tried to forget, but tonight we bring them back to life. Softly, slowly, like a candle flickering in an empty hall. So before you get comfortable, take a gentle moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if these deep sleep history stories help you find peace, sleep better, or simply reflect on our shared journey through time. Now, close your eyes, let your breath settle, and drift with me into a world where power, curiosity, loneliness, and spectacle shaped the strangest nights in noble history.
As twilight settled over the gentle hills of 18th century Surrey, the estates of England began to blur into a world where nature, superstition, and aristocratic whimsy intertwined. In this soft half-light, nobles would wander through their manicured gardens, imagining themselves as patrons of not just art and architecture, but of human curiosities. And it was here, at Painshill Park in the 1740s, that something almost unbelievable began. Charles Hamilton, a nobleman fascinated by romantic ideas long before the movement had a name, stood before the mouth of an artificial grotto and wondered, what if this cave had a soul? What if a living sage dwelled inside? That single question sparked one of the strangest practices ever recorded in aristocratic history: hermit keeping. Unlike gardeners or servants, the hermit was meant to be a living ornament, a silent spirit who wandered the grounds like a character from an old parable. Hamilton even placed an advertisement offering 700 guineas, a fortune at the time, to any man willing to commit to 7 years of solitude, silence, and transformation. The contract was almost monastic. The hermit was to live in the grotto without cutting his hair, beard, or fingernails. He was to avoid speaking to anyone. He was to wear only a robe made of coarse goatskin, and he was forbidden from leaving the estate. He was to become part of the landscape, the way a candle belongs to a shrine or a statue belongs to a temple. And yet, for all its mystique, the very first hermit lasted 3 weeks. Visitors were told the sage of Painshill spent his days meditating in the dim glow of moss-covered stone. But one evening, a servant spotted him slipping out of the estate and heading straight toward a tavern. A single pint of ale ended his career. Hamilton dismissed him instantly, not out of anger, but out of disappointment, as though a character in a story had stepped out of his pages. Still, the idea had taken root. Across the country, nobles whispered about it at dinner tables and garden parties. A personal hermit became a symbol of taste, wealth, and philosophical depth. It wasn't entertainment. It was a performance of melancholy, solitude, and the fragile line between civilization and nature. And as the trend spread, England's twilight gardens began to fill with silent figures sitting beside pools, at the mouths of caves, or beneath ancient oaks. Men who had agreed to vanish from society so they could become curiosities within it. As the trend spread, some hermits became legends, figures whispered about by travelers who came seeking not spectacle, but a strange sense of tranquility. One such figure was Father Francis of Hawkstone Park. Beginning in 1784, he took residence inside a carefully crafted grotto, a space shaped not for comfort, but for atmosphere. Damp stone walls, a narrow wooden bed, a single window that caught the last light of each day. For 42 years he lived there. Visitors who ventured into the winding paths of Hawkstone Park often reported the same experience, emerging from the shadow of towering yews to find an elderly figure seated by a small wooden table reading quietly from a weathered book. He didn't speak unless spoken to. He moved slowly, like a person who had long surrendered the need to hurry. His presence wasn't theatrical. It was calming, like an echo of a world where silence had value. Other nobles sought their own versions of this living symbol. The Duke of Richmond hired a hermit for £50 a year, a smaller sum but still a respectable income, to inhabit a Gothic-style stone cell built solely for this purpose. Guests were encouraged to wander near the cell, hoping to catch a glimpse of the robed figure in meditation. These hermits often lived simple lives, eating root vegetables grown on the estate, tending a small fire, copying passages of philosophy books, and creating the gentle illusion that wisdom lived in quiet places. Some nobles even designed entire sections of their gardens around these solitary figures, bridges leading to nowhere, winding paths ending at mossy grottos, lanterns placed to illuminate the hermit at just the right moment. It was, in a way, a form of immersive theater, but one performed not with actors, but with real human souls. And yet, behind the charm and curiosity, there was also loneliness. For the hermits were individuals who agreed to vanish, to live on the outskirts of society, to be observed but not embraced. Their lives existed within the quiet space between performance and purgatory, a space that only a few could endure. To the modern world, hermit-keeping may sound eccentric, perhaps even absurd. But to the nobles of the late 18th century, it symbolized something deeper, a longing for reflection in an era rushing toward industrial noise. Romanticism was beginning to bloom, and with it came a fascination with solitude, contemplation, and the purity of nature. The hermit embodied these ideals, becoming a living vessel for the anxieties and aspirations of the aristocracy. Visitors claimed that seeing a hermit sitting silently in a cave or near a pond felt like encountering a living memento mori, a reminder that life was brief, fragile, and destined to fade away. The hermit did not preach, he did not perform. His mere presence suggested that wisdom grows in silence, that the world is temporary, and that every individual must eventually retreat into their own quiet place. In a time when estates hosted lavish parties and endless feasts, the hermit served as a gentle counterweight, a whisper of simplicity in a world drowning in luxury. But as the 19th century unfolded, the world changed. Industrialization spread, cities swelled, and the shadowy stillness of romantic gardens began to feel outdated. Philosophers and critics questioned the ethics of the practice. Some argued it was cruel, reducing a human being to decoration. Others said it was misguided, an attempt to imitate spirituality without understanding it. Slowly, the hermits disappeared. Grottos collapsed, cells were converted into storage rooms, and the silent figures who once sat beneath oak trees simply faded from memory. Yet the fascination remains. Even now, historians, travelers, and dreamers revisit these stories not out of mockery, but out of curiosity. Because hermit-keeping reveals something about the human condition. It shows how deeply people crave meaning, how even the wealthy, surrounded by luxury, sought someone who represented the quiet they themselves could not find. And as our hermit, wherever he once lived, withdraws into the deeper darkness of his cave, we prepare to step into another world of noble oddities, one stranger and perhaps more unsettling than this.
In the glittering halls of Renaissance palaces, where silks rustled like gentle waves and chandeliers glowed with the warm breath of candlelight, the sound of laughter did not always spring from joy. Often, it rose from something darker, an amusement built on imbalance, on power, and on the vulnerability of those who had no choice but to perform. Tonight, we step softly into this unsettling chapter, beginning in the courts of 16th and 17th century Spain, where nobles entertained themselves with practices that would feel unimaginable now. One of the most troubling was dwarf tossing. It sounds brutal because it was. During the reign of King Philip IV, dwarf throwing contests were sometimes staged as after-banquet diversions. Instead of music or poetry, the court would gather around padded cushions piled at the center of the hall. Then a court dwarf, often dressed in ornate fabrics too heavy for their small frame, would be lifted and thrown gently or not so gently toward the mound of pillows, all for applause. And yet, within this cruelty lies stories of individuals whose spirits did not shrink under the weight of such entertainment. One was Geoffrey Hudson, born in 1619, who stood only 18 inches tall. His small stature turned him into a fascination, and eventually he became the prized court dwarf of Queen Henrietta Maria of England. The moment that defined his entry into court life is retold like a strange fable. At a royal banquet, a massive pie was presented to the queen. When the crust was lifted, Geoffrey stepped out, perfectly dressed, bowing with careful dignity as the court gasped. It was theatrical, absurd, and undeniably dehumanizing. Yet Geoffrey himself would go on to live a life that defied expectations, serving as a courier, a duelist, even a soldier. His existence reminds us that behind every spectacle there was a person, thinking, feeling, surviving. And as we picture these grand halls now emptied by time, their echoing laughter fading into stone, we begin to understand something deeper. The Renaissance courts did not simply want entertainment, they wanted control over it. They wanted to shape human lives into narrative props, living symbols that could be admired, played with, or dismissed. The softness of this story comes not from the act itself, which was harsh, but from the space between, where we imagine the quiet moments before the laughter, the stillness as a performer waited, knowing all eyes would soon be on them. As the centuries turned, the role of court dwarf expanded into something far more complex than a performer. In Spain's Golden Age, they became woven into the very symbolism of power. Paintings from this period, especially those by Diego Velázquez, tell us more than any diary or decree ever could. In his masterpiece, Las Meninas from 1656,
dwarfs appear not as comic props, but as fixtures of court life, standing in quiet contrast to the poised, porcelain-like members of the royal family. Their presence, small, yet unmistakably human, offered a strange juxtaposition: vulnerability next to grandeur, realism beside ceremony. And in a world where image meant everything, this contrast was valuable. Court dwarfs served roles that shifted with the moods of kings. Some delivered messages through corridors where gossip breathed more freely than the wind. Others entertained guests with wit or acrobatics. A few, astonishingly, became secret advisors, not because of their status, but because nobles saw them as safe confidants, individuals who lived inside the walls, invisible yet always present. Sebastián de Mora and Don Diego de Acedo became two of the most famous of these figures. In Velázquez's portraits, they stare back at us not with forced cheer, but with a weary, intelligent dignity. Sebastian sits with hands folded, his expression neither mocking nor playful, but deeply aware. Don Diego, holding a book, appears thoughtful, almost scholarly, as though reminding the viewer that intellect is not measured in height. These portraits reveal a truth that history often hides. Many court dwarfs were not passive participants in their fate. They navigated a world that both elevated and diminished them, finding small pockets of autonomy within a life defined by spectacle. At the same time, their proximity to power granted them privileges many commoners could never dream of: fine clothing, private chambers, stipends, and a place within the highest circles of society. Yet privilege is not the same as freedom. A velvet robe could not erase the fact that they were chosen for their bodies, not their desires. They lived inside a contradiction: admired yet objectified, trusted yet controlled, elevated but never allowed to walk away. If you walked through a Renaissance palace at night, long after the music faded and the torches dimmed, you might find a different story than the one painted for daylight guests. Behind the silk curtains and gilded doors were private chambers reserved for court dwarfs, rooms more comfortable than many commoners, yet still belonging to the palace rather than to the person. Their lives were filled with contradictions. They were dressed in silk, but not allowed to choose it. They slept in soft beds, but not in rooms that belonged to them. They earned wages higher than ordinary workers, but those wages came with expectations to be available, presentable, amusing, or obedient at all times. Some found protection in court life, a safety they might not have had outside. Others suffered beneath the invisible weight of being constantly watched, constantly judged, constantly used as symbols in a game they did not design. But history, with all of its sharp turns, eventually shifted. By the 18th century, Enlightenment ideas spread across Europe, changing the way society thought about dignity and humanity. People began questioning the morality of treating anyone as curiosity or entertainment. Royal courts no longer saw dwarfs as symbols of prestige, but as reminders of an outdated cruelty. And just as suddenly as the tradition had risen, it faded. The grand halls gemmed, the contests stopped, and the role of the court dwarf dissolved quietly into history. And now, as our lantern light softens and the palace corridors fall silent, we drift away from this chapter, toward something stranger, still waiting deeper in the shadows of noble history.
Imagine a town square, under a velvet Italian sky, somewhere in the 15th century, when torches painted the stone walls with gold and shadow. The air is warm, carrying the faint smell of olives, horse sweat, and wood smoke. In the town of Marostica, in northern Italy, people gather around a pattern carved into the ground. 64 squares, alternately light and dark, laid out not on a table, but on the very heart of the piazza. Tonight, the game is not made of carved wood or polished ivory. Tonight, the chess pieces are alive. This is where legend says it began, around the year 1454, when two noblemen fell in love with the same woman, the daughter of the local lord. In other stories, they might have dueled with swords at dawn or plotted in whispered corners. But here, something stranger unfolded. The lord, unwilling to see blood spilled, decided that the fate of his daughter's hand in marriage would not be settled on a battlefield, but on a chessboard. Not just any chessboard, a living one. So the square was marked out, the town called to watch, and an entire cast of human pieces was assembled. Knights wore real armor, crests gleaming in the torchlight. Rooks and bishops stood in formation, draped in costumes stitched with the colors of their side. Pawns were villagers and guards, nervous but trying to stand tall beneath helmets that felt too heavy. As the bells rang, the two rivals stepped onto balconies overlooking the square, not as warriors, but as players. Yet those below them, standing in the squares, were the ones who would act. At each move, a herald shouted the command, and a human piece walked, slow, deliberate, sometimes trembling, to the next square. When a piece was captured, there were no wooden taps, no quiet removal. Instead, the human piece bowed, sometimes performed a small dramatic gesture, and stepped out of the grid, merging back into the crowd. From above, it was a game of strategy. From the ground, it was a choreography of obedience and nerves. And yet, there was a softness to it as well. The flicker of torches, the hush before each move, the way the entire town seemed to hold its breath when a knight stepped forward or a queen crossed the board. For those standing as pieces, time moved differently. Minutes stretched into something like hours. The square beneath their feet felt both very small and impossibly large, as if they were tiny parts of a story that had outgrown them. In this legend of Marostica, love, pride, and honor were translated into movement. No blades were drawn, no blood was spilled. But the idea that human beings could become living game pieces, that their bodies could represent risk, sacrifice, and victory, took root. And from this quiet Italian town, the strange notion of human chess began to drift into the imagination of Europe's courts. As the idea traveled north and across the centuries, it began to change shape. What started as a legendary solution to a love triangle in Italy evolved into a carefully staged form of court entertainment. By the time we reached the 16th century and the French court of Catherine de' Medici at Fontainebleau, human chess had become something grander, colder, and far more demanding. Picture the gardens of Fontainebleau at dusk. Trimmed hedges casting long shadows, fountains murmuring softly, the sky slowly turning from pale blue to deep indigo. In a courtyard cleared for the event, 64 squares are marked on flagstones, and courtiers, some of them highborn, some servants in borrowed finery, stand in their assigned spaces. Each is a piece in a game they do not control. Catherine, fascinated by symbolism and spectacle, is said to have used members of her own court in such living games. The rules were simple, but the expectations heavy. A human piece had to stand still for long stretches. No fidgeting, no talking, no breaking the illusion. When the player, often a nobleman or prince, called a move, a herald announced it, and the corresponding piece would step forward, cross the board, and settle into another square. If they were captured, they had to perform their defeat, sometimes kneeling, sometimes lying still on the cold stone, listening to the game continue above them. Games could last 3 to 6 hours. Imagine the ache in the legs, the heaviness in the shoulders, the numb feet confined in tight shoes. For those watching from cushioned seats, it was a delightful intellectual display, an elegant dance of strategy. For those standing silently on the board, it was endurance dressed as entertainment. And yet, even here, beneath the demands and discipline, something strangely hypnotic emerges. The slow turn of the game, the measured footsteps, the careful pauses, everything unfolds with the rhythm of a ritual. The living chessboard becomes not just a show of power, but a moving painting. Colors, fabrics, faces, and armor, all shifting in small, deliberate increments. From a balcony, you might forget that these are tired bodies, not painted figures. But if you stand close enough, you would see the small signs of strain, a tremor in a hand, a shifting weight from one foot to another, a quiet exhale of relief when the game finally ends. Human chess in these courts was never just about the game. It was about hierarchy. Those who played the pieces were reminded of their place, while those who directed them tasted the illusion of godlike control. And as night settled over Fontainebleau, and the court retired to warmth and music, the squares on the stone faded back into ordinary ground, leaving behind only a memory. People standing as rooks and knights, queens and kings, waiting in absolute stillness for someone else to decide their next move. And as we let the image fade, the torches dim, the crowd dissolve, and the board become empty once more, we drift with it, deeper into the quieter, darker corners of noble history, where even games could leave real bruises.
As midnight approaches in our journey through noble pastimes, the world around us grows quieter. But the history we are stepping into was anything but silent. Imagine England in the 16th century. Fog drifting above the Thames, wooden arenas creaking with the weight of eager crowds, and nobles dressed in velvet leaning forward with anticipation. In these moments, animal baiting, bear baiting, and bull baiting became the heartbeat of brutal entertainment. Henry VIII adored it. Elizabeth I loved it even more. It was considered refined sport, a test of strength between animals forced into violence they never chose. Imagine a large arena, perhaps the famous Paris Garden in Southwark, south of the Thames. The ground is dirt, packed hard by thousands of footsteps. In the center stands a chained bear, massive, breathing slowly, its fur matted, its body swaying from side to side as if trying to make sense of what is about to come. Around the ring, noblemen place bets, laughing softly, their coin purses jingling. Then the mastiffs enter, powerful hunting dogs trained for aggression, their paws kicking up dust as they circled the bear. A trumpet sounds. The crowd surges forward. The dogs leap. The bear rises on its hind legs, teeth flashing in the dim light. What follows is a frenzy of instinct, fear, and chaos. For some watchers, it was a test of courage. For others, a spectacle of power. But for the animals, it was terror. In 1583, a crowded day at Paris Garden ended in disaster when a wooden stand collapsed, killing 8 spectators. Some claimed it was divine punishment. Others continued attending as if nothing had happened. And in the center of it all, beneath the shouting and cheering and clashing, lies a quiet truth. These animals did not understand why they were being forced to defend themselves. They only reacted, driven by instinct, surrounded by noise they could never escape. Tonight, as we step gently through this memory, the arena feels strangely distant, its roar fading into the soft dark, leaving behind only the echo of paws on earth and the quiet rustle of chains. Beyond the arenas, another form of spectacle captivated the nobility. Menageries, collections of exotic animals gathered from distant lands. To step into one was to step into a gallery of living wonders, curated by monarchs who wanted the world to see not only their wealth, but the reach of their power. In the Tower of London, from the year 1235 to 1835, lions paced behind iron bars. A polar bear, gifted from Norway, was allowed to fish in the Thames, chained at the waist as it lunged into icy water. Elephants, leopards, ostriches, and even camels arrived in cages dragged across continents. Each creature symbolized prestige, a trophy of global influence. But the greatest spectacle of all belonged to Versailles under Louis XIV. The Sun King did not simply build gardens and fountains. He built a palace for beasts. More than 1,000 animals lived within his menagerie. Tigers with restless eyes, bright-plumed birds from the tropics, antelopes grazing nervously, and predators pacing behind gilded bars. Servants carried baskets of meat and fruit through corridors that echoed with roars, screeches, and the clatter of hooves. These places were meant to inspire awe, and they did, but they also carried a darker purpose. Kings hosted animal fights to shock and entertain their guests. Lion against tiger, elephant against rhinoceros, bear against bull. Not all battles ended in bloodshed. Many animals refused to fight, confused by the unnatural settings. But nobles often pushed the spectacle further, craving intensity that nature never intended. Maintaining such creatures was astonishingly expensive. Feeding an elephant for a year cost as much as the annual earnings of 500 farmers. Housing predators required teams of handlers, carpenters, healers, and guards. But for kings, these costs were symbols, proof that they could command not only people, but the wild itself. And yet beneath the gold and grandeur, the menageries were places of unease. The cages were small, the temperatures wrong, the food inconsistent, the noise overwhelming. These animals, taken from deserts, jungles, and mountains, now lived in climates that felt like an echo of home, rather than the real thing. When you walk through these spaces in your imagination tonight, there is a strange stillness. Lions lying quietly, birds tucked beneath their wings, elephants swaying gently, creatures enduring a life meant for display rather than freedom. For all their grandeur, both baiting pits and royal menageries hid the same quiet truth. The animals inside them lived far from the worlds they were meant for. Behind the roars and applause and royal pride were cold mornings in cramped cages, stale food, constant stress, and illnesses no one understood how to treat. The mortality rate was staggering. In some collections, up to 70% of animals died within their first year, victims of wrong climate, poor diet, or the simple exhaustion of captivity. Many never adapted, pacing endlessly in circles, wearing grooves into stone floors. Others lay motionless for hours, their bodies present, but their minds somewhere far beyond the bars. Back in England, the baiting arenas continued drawing crowds, but dissent slowly grew. Writers, ministers, and even some nobles began questioning the morality of cheering for suffering. The collapse of the Paris garden stand in 1583 was a warning, a tragedy whispered about for decades. Still, the games persisted until society itself changed. By the early 19th century, a new awareness took root, an idea that animals, too, deserved some measure of mercy. In 1835, England finally banned bear baiting and most forms of animal blood sport. Menageries shifted from private collections of power to more regulated institutions. It was not perfect, far from it, but it was the beginning of something different. The slow understanding that marvel should not require cruelty. Tonight, as we walk through these memories, the roars have softened, the chains have stilled. The cages, once symbols of royal majesty, sit empty in the dark halls of history. What remains is a lesson whispered more gently than the spectacles ever were. That marvel, beauty, and curiosity never truly needed suffering to survive. They only needed time and kindness, and the simple understanding that every creature, large or small, fierce or gentle, belongs most truly in the world it was born into. And as we step away from the fading echoes of these long-forgotten arenas, we prepare to enter yet another strange chamber of noble pastimes, one where the boundary between fascination and danger becomes even thinner.
As the night sinks deeper and the halls of history grow quieter around us, the candles on the long banquet tables burn low, their flames shrinking into small golden sighs. In the distance, music softens, like a memory you can almost hear but not quite grasp. This is the hour when noble restraint begins to melt, when the weight of velvet and protocol loosens just enough for dangerous games to slip in. In France, in the late 14th century, during a court celebration that should have been nothing more than an evening of dancing, wine, and polite conversation, the nobility decided that ordinary masks and music were not enough. They wanted something wilder, stranger, something that would make even their fellow aristocrats gasp. So a new idea was born. A masquerade where the king himself and his companions would dress as wild men of the forest. They wrapped their bodies in tight garments made from flax fibers soaked in pitch and resin, a kind of primitive costume that clung to their skin and smelled faintly of smoke and tar even before a single flame approached. The plan was simple. They would burst into the hall as savages, dancing and leaping for the amusement of the guests, a living illusion of chaos in a world that prided itself on order. Picture the scene slowly, as if you were there, but watching from a safe, shadowed corner. The hall is crowded, the ceiling lost in darkness above flickering chandeliers. Torches line the walls. Perfume, sweat, and spiced wine hang in the air. Drums thrum softly under the chatter. Then, without warning, the doors swing open and figures rush in. 5, 6 men covered head to toe in rough, hair-like fibers, faces half hidden under masks, moving with exaggerated feral gestures. Guests laugh, some in shock, some in delight. This is not history for textbooks. It is history for sleep. The kind of story that unfolds in slow motion, where every detail is softened by time. The wild men dance among the crowd, rattling chains, bending low, springing high, their strange costumes brushing against velvet sleeves and embroidered gowns. Flames from nearby torches lick the edges of the hall shadows, drawing a trembling line between spectacle and danger. In the middle of this swirling performance, one guest, buoyed by wine, curiosity, and the desire to be closer to the spectacle, steps forward with a torch in hand. Perhaps he only wants to see, just a little more clearly, the face behind one of the masks. Perhaps he means no harm, just as so many reckless choices in history began with a harmless impulse. The torch lifts, the distance narrows, and then in a moment too small to measure, the flame brushes flax. What happens next does not need to be told with violence to be understood. The pitch-soaked fibers catch, first in a small, uncertain glow, then in a sudden hungry bloom of fire. One costume ignites, then another, flames running along the fabric like whispered rumors. The music falters, then stops. Laughter cracks into shouts. The hall, moments ago a dream of control and polish, becomes a place of confusion. Silks rustling in panic, chairs scraping against stone, the sharp scent of burning resin filling the air. Yet, even here, in this moment of fear, we can step back and look at it from a distance, like a painting hanging in a quiet museum. Bright masks, moving flames, faces turned in shock, all frozen in a single frame. Later generations would call it The Ball of the Burning Men, a title that sounds almost theatrical, like a tragic play staged for an audience that never went home unchanged. It stands as a strange monument to how far nobles were willing to go in pursuit of sensation, how easily they turned their own bodies into props in the endless search for something new and thrilling. They had music, wealth, power, and safety, yet they still reached for risk, inviting fire into a room already crowded with candles. When we look back from our calm distance now, lying in the dark and listening to this history for sleep, the story feels less like a tale of disaster and more like a quiet warning about the human need to push every boundary, even inside a ballroom. As the imaginary smoke clears and the last echoes of that ill-fated dance dissolve into the stone walls of forgotten castles, we gently step away from the suffocating heat of the hall. The music fades. The guests are gone. Only the faint outline of masks and scorched fabric remains in our minds. We walk, slowly and silently, down a corridor lined with cold tapestries, away from the overheated air of feasts and masquerades, and out toward a different kind of stage, where nobles would soon play with something even more dangerous than fire. Because for some of them, war itself could be turned into theater, a carefully choreographed performance where soldiers and servants became actors, and real battlefields became just another backdrop for a nobleman's idea of a game. Imagine a wide field resting under the pale breath of dawn, a thin veil of mist drifting across the grass like a soft blanket laid gently over the earth. Hundreds of soldiers stand in perfect formation, their armor catching the fragile morning light, spears lifted upright like a silent forest of polished metal. Banners sway softly in the breeze, and drums send slow, steady pulses through the quiet valley. And yet, there is no enemy, no danger, no blood waiting beneath the surface. Only an audience, seated comfortably on raised wooden stands, watching something that looks like war, but is not war at all. In many European courts, noble lords staged elaborate mock battles, rehearsed over and over until they resembled grand outdoor theater rather than true conflict. Soldiers were ordered to charge, to shout, to slam shields together with dramatic force, but their swords were dulled on purpose, their spear tips wrapped carefully in cloth. Each fall, each gasp, each moment of danger had already been written into the script. From afar, the chaos seemed real. Up close, it was choreography. From the stands, spectators gazed out at a shimmering sea of armor spreading beneath the morning sun. The soldiers moved like waves rolling across the field, clouds of dust lifting around their boots, the echoes of their voices rising and fading across the hills. It looked heroic, almost beautiful. A display that allowed nobles to feel powerful without ever stepping into harm's way. But beneath all the shining metal and triumphant shouting lay a hollow truth. None of it was real. No lives were at risk. No kingdoms trembled. It was a luxury, an imitation of danger crafted for people who would never truly face it. For the nobles, staging war from a place of perfect safety offered a peculiar comfort. It let them display authority without consequence, rehearse fantasies of conquest without cost, and, in a strange way, toy with the world,
its armies, its symbols, its ancient seriousness, while remaining untouched by any of it. The soldiers were performers. The battlefield was a stage. War was merely a script written by those who could afford to ignore what real war meant. Now, when we revisit these scenes from the soft distance of centuries, they don't feel triumphant at all. They feel unreal, like a dream that tries to mimic danger, but never understands its weight. And as you lie here tonight, listening to the faint echo of shields and the soft flutter of imaginary banners in the wind of memory, the illusion grows even softer, fading like footprints in morning mist. This battlefield never existed. These victories meant nothing. These dangers were only shadows. And as we gently step away from this imitation of war, from this strange place where nobles played with fear the way others play with music, we arrive at the quiet truth that closes our journey tonight. That throughout history, those who had everything often sought the strangest ways to feel alive, while the simplest moments of peace, stillness, and reflection were the treasures they rarely found. Let the field fade now. Let the drums fall silent. Let the artificial war dissolve into the soft darkness of night. You are safe here, far from every battlefield, real or imagined. And as this chapter comes to an end, allow the quiet of the present moment to rest lightly over you, gentle, protective, and yours alone.
And so, we have walked together through the strangest corners of noble pleasure. Hermits who lived like ornaments hidden in garden shadows, dwarfs and living chess pieces performing roles they never chose, masquerade balls lit by dangerous flames, and battles staged not for victory, but for spectacle. Behind all these entertainments, behind every mask and costume and carefully crafted illusion, there was a quiet emptiness, an ache they tried to fill with anything unusual, anything extraordinary, as long as it kept them from facing themselves. Wealth gave them power, but also burdens and sorrows that no feast or spectacle could ever truly cure. But you, here, tonight, without golden halls, without endless gardens or towering estates, hold something even they struggled to find, a moment of true stillness, a gentle pause that belongs only to you. Let your eyes soften slowly, as if sleep is brushing a fingertip across the edge of your thoughts. Feel your breath settling, calm and steady, like waves meeting the shore at night. All the images of distant castles, candle-lit halls,
echoing gardens and staged battlefields, let them drift away now, growing softer and lighter, fading into the mist of another century. You are safe here, in your room, in this moment, in the quiet world that belongs only to you. Let sleep arrive gently, like a good guest stepping quietly across the threshold of your mind, unhurried and unannounced, simply settling beside you. Good night, and may your dreams wander softly through the silent halls of history.